Welcome to Podlomania Podcast, your photography and video podcast, where we introduce you to some of the most amazing creatives from around the world. I'm your host, Wayne Johns, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend, buddy, and co-host, Jake Hicks. Hey, man.
How you doing? Looking dapper there in your vest.
In my wife beater, right? In the sweatbox of my studio. You think I'm glistening now? You wait till we get partway through this podcast.
Beautiful, just bronzed. Yeah.
Shimmering bronze.
Yeah.
I won't say God, mate, but we'll leave that bit out for sure. Definitely not of that stature.
The joys of recording audio in a room with all the windows and doors closed and no fan on.
Yeah. I'm going to lose about 7 or 8 pounds after this podcast.
I can see you shrinking already.
Yeah. So, man, I've got to say, you're looking quite sprightly and alive, considering somebody had a birthday yesterday, mate.
Yeah, it was a big one. Yeah, the big 4-0 in lockdown, no less. So it wasn't particularly exciting, but at least I get to celebrate it twice. Yeah, so we're definitely gonna save that up.
I can just imagine it now, mate. The party games, you have shots on the table, broomstick, put your head on the middle, run around in circles in the living room and see what you crashed into. Was it something like that?
Yeah, it wouldn't take very long.
Oh, well, like you say, at least you get more than one celebration. So when lockdown's over, mate, we'll have to make up for it. But that's cool. Well, before we get into this episode, first of all, to our listeners, we've got to apologize because there was an episode that didn't go out on the 14th. With this whole COVID lockdown thing, not going into too much detail, let's say some issues on the family side of things for me over here, with a member of my family and hospitalization and things. Nothing to do with COVID-19, luckily, but it did interfere with all our plans and schedules. So we apologize that no show went out on the 14th. But to come back from that, we've got an almighty guest on today, haven't we, mate? An almighty guest. I mean, we've got everyone on video chat here. We can see him. I've got to say, before I actually introduce the episode, looking at both of you on our video feed, I feel like I've just come last place in a hair competition. What's going on there? You two have got all these lovely full locks. And I'm like...
You're liking our COVID haircuts, yeah? Or
liking the COVID haircuts, right? I mean, yours was shoulder length before this started.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad for me. I only have mine cut twice a year anyway, so it's fine, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into our show, episode 28. Now, today we dive just a little bit into the deep but very meaningful and creative mind of Canadian artist, photographer, activist, visual engineer, and storyteller. It's only bloody Benjamin Von Wong, isn't it? Who's best known for his environmental art installations and hyper-realist art style. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome, man. Yeah, COVID's definitely got its downsides, but finally being able to get you locked down for this podcast has been a big plus. Yeah, I mean, it's not all bad news. It's not all bad news.
This has been the first time I've been able to plan something weeks in advance. Usually I don't know where I'm going to be 2-3 weeks out. So this has turned out to be good, at least for this podcast.
It's no trouble at all for us to work on a Saturday for you, Ben. Honestly, don't think twice about it. It's not a problem. Normally we let the orphanage next door use the Wi-Fi on a Saturday, but we were like, look, Ben's coming on, like, you know what I mean? You're gonna have to tough it out. But
you can't take Wi-Fi away from the orphanage. It's horrible.
And you're lucky. I've managed to just push some things in my diary aside to make some space.
Squeeze this in. Yeah. But thanks for coming on, Ben. I really appreciate it, man. This is going to be great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We've been wanting to get, as you know, Ben, we've been trying on and off for a long time, and it was trying to make the diaries balance, wasn't it? Because you were off on your travels quite a bit and never in the same place at the same time. So finally, we're here.
The plan this year was actually to be 100% nomadic. So I gotten rid of my place in San Francisco, and then I was in Australia when shit really hit the fan.
Really?
And now I am a 33-year-old unemployed artist living with my parents here in Montreal. So things have changed.
Oh, back home.
Yes,
nice.
I retreated back to my parents' house. Actually, it's turned out to be a really good thing because I was planning on being here right now because my sister is about to give birth in about 2 weeks. So
cool, sweet, man. That's beautiful.
I saw your maternity project.
My mom started noticing that fruits and vegetables could look like buildings and nature, and compelled me to create a maternity set of photographs for my sister. And so we just started experimenting as a family, like, what could we do? And so for the listeners who don't know what this is all about, we just took a bunch of photographs of my sister and her husband and my family as silhouettes in front of this dingy white background, and a work light, because I don't have any gear with me here. And printed these out, cut them out with little scissors, and just hung them out. So we have rappelling shots. We have stand-up paddle boards made out of mango and dragon fruit. Just awesome. Any number of things like that.
I saw them, yeah. There's a short video on it as well, which is definitely worth a watch. Yeah. But
the video,
apart from anything else, did it? Went viral.
The video went viral on TikTok. It got 3.5 million views.
TikTok.
Wow, really?
I've heard of
TikTok.
That. Yeah.
Oh man, we're missing out on TikTok. Oh.
He's a young man though, Wayne. That's what that is. Yeah, he's allowed on TikTok. I don't think once you hit 40, they ban you from TikTok.
Well, I've been banned for years then, really, already.
No, but that video is definitely worth a watch if the three people who haven't seen it yet, they should definitely check it out. But more than that, in terms of the final product, it was great that you managed to do that project with your family, and to get everybody involved is awesome.
We'll drop a link to that in the show notes anyway, so people can just click on that in the feed. So that would be cool. Yeah. Right, Ben, we start off with the same question for every single guest. So for our audience, how would you describe yourself and what you do?
It's particularly hard to answer that question right now, because at this very moment, I am attempting to figure out who I am without my story, because I'm no longer able to do what I do. So who am I without the work that I create? I don't really know. But if you had asked me this question 3 months ago, I would have said that I am an artist and activist that creates photographs that people think are photoshopped in order to ignite conversations that can start social movements.
Like it. Okay.
That's short and sweet, man. That's short and sweet.
Very short and sweet.
That.
Like it.
You can't even get confused with that answer, can you? It's,
I will say that when we came to researching this, I mean, I knew a huge amount about you and your work already, but I went onto your website and I say this is probably going to be the easiest yet hardest interview to actually do, because you've got so much information on your website. I mean, you've got a blog there that goes back 10 years? Is that right, or even more?
Something like that, yeah. My blog goes back about 10 years.
Yeah. I've
gone through multiple identities over time, right? But I've always kept the Von Wong name. So it's the Von Wong brand has always been less about what I do, but about the journey of the person who's doing it. And I think that's what makes it complicated.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about your early beginnings then? Because if I'm not mistaken, did you used to be like a mining engineer or something?
Yeah. I went to school as a hard rock mining engineer, picked up photography after a girl broke up with me while I was working in a desert in Winnemucca, Nevada, which is about an hour away from Burning Man. So basically in the middle of nowhere.
And how long are we going back here? Is this 20 years ago, 15 years ago? How long are we going back?
This is exactly November 2007. So November 2007, bought my first camera, and it just started off as a hobby. I figured out that you could earn money as having a hobby, which is wonderful, which meant getting paid to do something you enjoyed doing. Started exploring more with creativity. In 2012, I quit my day job, not because I wanted to be a photographer, but because I didn't want to be an engineer. I realized that in 10 years, if I didn't do anything to change my life, I'd just be sitting at a bigger desk, earning a little bit more money, doing the exact same thing that I didn't believe in. And so quit my job. The plan was actually to travel temporarily and to go back to school. I got my GMAT. I was going to do an MBA. But things were just working out with photography. So I never had the excuse to go back to school. Now my GMAT has expired, so it's not even an option anymore. And 2000, how convenient, right? Yeah. In 2015, I got the largest project of my career with Huawei, where I got paid more than my entire career combined at the time. Wow. And then realized that just being a commercial photographer wasn't going to cut it for me. Started my journey into impact, and then.
So hang on a second. Let's before we just run along there. So how did you get that gig
all the way to the end?
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I could just like we're done, right? Bye. Yeah.
Our podcast over in 6 minutes. Amazing.
Yeah. So how did you get like this phenomenal job, like this gig that most photographers may wait their entire career and never still get that sort of gig? How did you land that job with Huawei?
I'm trying to think about like what the simple answer to that question is. The truth is there are multiple parallel pathways that had to happen for that job to come through. The first is that the art director who was in charge of the campaign was actually a follower of mine from the time, like 3-4 years prior, where I was like starting off shooting self-portraits in my bedroom. So there's that. There's the fact that at the time I was the best or one of the best fire photographers in the world. And the reason I became one of the best fire photographers in the world was because I failed at lighting a person on fire twice. And that on the second time I had published a video that got seen by a pyrotechnician in France who criticized my work. And I was like, who is this guy? He knows what he's talking about. And ended up working with him in France. And so with this guy, I managed to develop my fire portfolio. And then the third piece of the puzzle is the fact that I had managed to go viral a number of different times. So I understood the marketing behind photography and I had a following. And so I think without one of these pieces of the puzzle, the project wouldn't have come through.
Wow.
Agreed. So yeah, there is several things there. One, you already had a following and one of the people from Huawei was already following you. So you already had like a kind of half a foot. But
I didn't know him. We had never spoken prior to the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you already had a background in fire, and they wanted fire. Like that was in the project brief. Is that right?
Well, you know how companies are. They no one wants to take risk, so they just want you to do the thing you've already done, but slightly differently for them.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So for anyone who wants to, who goes like, oh man, I wish I could do that kind of project. Well, you have to prove that you can do that kind of project alone.
Agreed. Yeah.
First, otherwise, no one's ever going to hire you.
So you mentioned going viral, and you've already said it several times in this interview already. What part of your work goes viral? Is it really the videos that you make that go viral, or is it the actual finished still images that go viral?
I think it really depends, but more often than not, it's the video that goes viral. The process of how I create the final product is often more impressive than the product itself, because in the world, there are a lot of really good pieces of work. It just so happens that the way I get to my final products is not like a massive Hollywood crew. It's just like me, my mom, and like a whole bunch of other random people that show up. Actually, my mom's not a part of all of them, but you get the idea that it's all about the relatability of the projects themselves. And I've become very adept at actually telling the story behind the story, which is also a story. So there's like, it's like an inception of stories there.
We're going to touch on the video part a little bit later on, but just to carry on then through that career path, after that project that you did with Huawei, is that how you say it?
Huawei? Huawei. Me and Jake always say, who are we? Don't we, Jake?
Yeah. Now I'm never going to not say that. So after that, was that it? Was that your break in air quotes? Did it all just skyrocket from there?
I think it was the reverse, actually. After getting that project, I almost quit photography because I was like, wait, is this all that I can expect from a career as a commercial photographer? Just more money in my pocket and moving product off a shelf? It all felt very pointless, and it didn't feel like the mecca of what I wanted to make my life to be. And so I think a combination of the fact that it didn't take me very long to get lucky, and the fact that it just didn't feel like a destination that I wanted to be at, made me almost quit photography. I actually almost pivoted into documentary filmmaking for a little while. I was thinking back to my most proud moments in my life, and there were always moments of serving others, serving a cause, helping someone do something. And so the way that felt like the right path forward was making documentaries and helping support these stories, right? And when we think about impact, oftentimes like they're not fabricated stories. They're all like the real gritty, nitty gritty stuff, like unveiling the truth and so forth, right? So forth, investigative journalism and so forth. But then as I started down that path, I realized actually, you know what, telling sad stories all the time is just not really my jam. Like I was on the opposite spectrum of like doing really fancy, flashy things. And so I had to kind of take a step back and try to figure out how might I combine fantasy and impact together. And that took a lot longer than I expected. But because I had a little bit of cash in the bank, that became my runway. And I was like, I'm just going to put aside a year to figure out how I'm going to combine fantasy and impact together. And so that was 2016. A year later, I still hadn't figured out how to make a living doing it. So it took me actually 18 months between the time I decided I was going to focus 100% on impact and the time I got paid to do an impact project, 18 months. And I got my first project with Nike, where we they came up to me and they're like, hey, you do some crazy stuff. Can we tie some people on the edge of a skyscraper, and we want to promote our shoes? And I was like,
so that
sure.
Was their idea then?
Their idea was to do something crazy that defied gravity. They didn't know what that was because they wanted to show how light their shoes were. And initially they wanted me to use influencers. And I just said, look, I can't accept this project unless there's something impactful here. So let's find a compromise. So why not highlight social entrepreneurs instead? So I pivoted their concept. So that was the first one. The second one was with the big campaign with Dell, where we took a lifetime of electronic waste and converted into new pieces and so on and so forth. So it really took a lot of time to get there. And when I got there, now we're 2017 leading on to 2018. When I got there, I started to see that it didn't matter that I had figured it out, because the platforms on which I was designing shit to go viral on were changing. Yeah. Algorithms were changing. The appreciation for complex photography was changing. The value of a single video or piece of digital content was changing. And that's where I started pivoting into experiences and installations, because that was the growing market. And if what I was good at was creating worlds, I could create worlds for anyone to photograph themselves inside of. And so that's where I started trying installations. And it all seemed like a really great idea until coronavirus. And now that whole world is gone. So I'm not too sure what happens next.
When you say that whole world is gone, as in the whole point of people gathering to see something, is that what you mean?
I think it's more nuanced than that, right? It's a combination of things. So one, the way I do projects depends on global travel, because my stuff is so weird. There's not really a local market for it, right? People want something outstanding and weird. They find me and I come and do it. So that requires global travel. From there, in order to create the stuff that I do, I'm all about mobilizing a community to come together to do something that they had never done before. So that involves bringing people together. And then the final product usually is unveiled in some form of an event, right? Yeah. And so that is, in its very essence, bringing people together to start something. And then the point of it is to catalyze a social movement, which is, once again, bringing people together. So every single aspect of what I do is built around bringing people together in a time where people are not allowed to come together.
Yeah. Sure. So do you don't see us getting back to that time then? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that it's not, I don't see it happening in the near future, right? So even if let's just assume a world in which regulations were like on pause for a moment, people aren't comfortable to come together in big gatherings. They're not there coming together to celebrate. And so the fundamental fabric of like cultural society that was built around these gatherings has shifted and has changed and transformed. And the only way that changes back to the way it was is if a cure is available, a cure or a vaccine. And that's assuming a cure or vaccine can be developed. And that's assuming that even if it were developed, it was actually implemented and used and distributed globally. And take all those factors together, and I would say it's optimistic to have all that return in 2 years. And so I could sit around and wait.
Yeah.
I could sit around and wait for a couple of years. That would be fine. But that just seems like a complete misuse of time.
Your mum would kick you out. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So if we can just get tactical a second and look at your work. You already mentioned your passion for fire, and you obviously do a lot of very deep underwater stuff. You do a lot with fire, a lot with ice. You do a lot of very, I would say, dangerous and certainly unsafe. You have an unsafe obsession with a lot of those things. Like, what is it that draws that vision to those dangerous extremes? Is it simply a personal challenge for you, or do you think they are offering something unique to your work?
I think there's a difference between fear and danger, and that's something to keep in mind. So fear is an emotional response, and danger is the actual objective danger of the action. And so I would actually say that everything that I do is safe. It's not dangerous. But it looks dangerous, and it creates an emotion, an emotional knee-jerk reaction, right? So if you say I tied a model underwater with sharks swimming around, the knee-jerk reaction is a sense of fear. But then if you actually think about the fact that these are reef sharks and that they don't attack people, and that there are over 300 species of sharks, of which most are not dangerous, it's just the entire structure around it, then I get to craft a story around that Like these emotional reactions are what I craft my campaign on. They're the bedrock of the campaign so that I can ignite a sense of curiosity to start a conversation. So it's just a tool. It's a tool and it's something that I also enjoy to do, right? So I enjoy the adrenaline rush moments and so forth. But as with everything, you plan this stuff, right? You plan and you make sure that it's as safe as possible, because really my entire career hinges on one misstep and then the whole thing comes crashing down. So I'm very conscious of that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think a good description is a lot of your stuff seems very extreme. You know, I mean, the end results seem extreme. The application seems extreme. The behind the scenes looks extreme. I think that's the key word here, because you're not just pushing your own limits either, are you? All these people that are joining you for this shoot, and the models that are not models and the real people you may be using, you like to push their limits and the limits of the talent as well, don't you? To the verge of that fear factor, if you want to put that back in there.
Well, I think we as human beings live for experiences, right? We're human beings, not human doings. We want to be present and we want to enjoy things. We want to try things we've never ever done before. And so it all comes down to like, what kind of experiences are you able to offer people that they will never forget? And even if that's just by proxy, right? Even if that's just through a behind the scene video, you're offering people an experience in exchange for their time. And so for me, it's always about how can I offer people something? I'm not creating this just for myself to brag about myself. I'm actually trying to offer something that inspires others to believe either in their own potential or in the potential of the world, right? And that's the hope. That's the hope.
And I think that's the really nice thing about your work as well, is that because you're behind the scenes, shows the journey to the end result. But like you say, it also shows a second story of a journey for the people involved. And I think that's the really nice thing about it. You got that double story out of there, and you're actually sharing that experience for people to see, for everyone that's sort of, got involved with your shoot. And I think that's just beautiful. I think it's just such a nice thing to do, and rewarding. You're allowing people to do this, and they don't have to pay for it. So just for a bit of their time, they get this experience and imagery and behind the scenes to keep forever. I just think that's stunning.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, I like to say that I want to create the world that I want to live in. So it's all about, creating that reality and offering people that experience. Like I've had the best experiences of being invited onto things that I should never be a part of. And so I like to also be able to extend that opportunity to other people.
Obviously, up until BC, before COVID, it looked like from the outside looking in that you were only doing like a handful of very big, very like epic shoots a year. Is that true, or are you shooting just like all the time, doing little projects as well? I suppose I'm asking that is, do you enjoy that prep work as just as much, or do you like wish that you could have the camera in your hand a bit more now?
I think the passion for photography has sort of waned over time. Photography has become effectively a lot more of a tool than of a passion. Like I don't get so much joy of the process. I still have fun doing it. Okay. But if I look at like the amount of photographs I take a year, let's say I'll take, I'll capture and release 3 images per project I do, but it takes me a year to create a project. Does that, like, am I still a photographer? I don't know, right? So I'm still using like a Sony A7R II. My gear hasn't really been updated. It hasn't been about the gear and the passion for the shooting as much as like, what is this tool going to help me accomplish? I've also found that like by using gear that is older and more relatable, it makes your work more relatable and actually viewed in a higher light. So it has like opposite effect. The more you can do with less, the more people would appreciate it, which has been interesting. And to answer your question specifically, though, of like, do I enjoy it? The process, I do and I don't. So I love talking to people. I love learning about things that I don't know. I love helping people solve problems. And so a lot of like the design work in the project themselves, so like the bottom of the iceberg, is having conversations, finding people, understanding what their problems are, trying to see how creativity might offer the solution and how we might craft the right story for the right project to create the right emotional reaction so that it can actually have a chance at being picked up and spread online, right? Like that entire process is something that is cool, but also really frustrating. So it's frustrating because the hit rate is very low, right? You can go through all of the work and you can still not have a project. If anything in that chain gets broken at any point in time, all the work that you've done up to that point gets taken away. And I think that has been frustrating. So one of the major shifts, BC, before COVID, that I had made last year was I stopped offering concepts for free. I think one of the reactions that we have as creatives is like, oh, you're interested in what I do and you want to talk. Okay, let's start getting creative and let's figure out all these different ideas together. But they haven't actually invested anything into it. They just actually opened up their mouth to say like, oh, what do you think we could do together? And then boom, we're off to the marches. So
you stopped doing things for free? Sorry, what do you mean by that?
I stopped offering concepts for free. So this is how it would go, right? I go up, I do a presentation at a conference. A bunch of people would come up to me and they'd be like, oh, wow, I really love your work. It's so cool. I think that's exactly what we need. Yeah, a company, a person, a rich person. Like, it doesn't really matter who it is, a nonprofit. They just come up and they'd be like, hey, I really love what you do. Do you think there could be any way for us to work together? Like, I don't really know. And then my instinct would be, okay, tell me about what you do. Like, tell me what you're working on. Tell me what the struggles are. And then I would just toss all these different ideas at them. And like, they haven't done anything yet. I'm just there like doing all this work, trying to figure out like what this fit is, because if we could just find a fit, then maybe I would have a project. And
they take it away.
And I would do that like over and over again. And things would fall through for whatever reason. Like, and this would happen recurrently over and over again. And it just became so evident that this was something that was going to be unsustainable. So I got burned on 2 major projects. Like, I'd actually set aside 2 months. I was going to do some work inside of a major festival, and I was going to get paid to create an installation for a big trade show. And I'd spent 2 months developing projects, and I put 2 months aside to actually execute these projects. So I had like a 4-month period that had just like basically exploded into nothingness. And I was like, what just happened? Like, there was so much time gone into this thing. Wow. Where does this leave me? And so I just went on vacation. So I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with I hate vacations, but I'm going to try this new thing. I'm going to go on a vacation with my girlfriend and we're going to figure this thing out. But then I had a couple of different conversations with mentors of mine, and I got this amazing piece of advice. And it was that consultants get paid to think. It doesn't matter if they execute on anything. They just get paid to think and design. Whereas artists only get paid if you execute. It doesn't matter like how much thinking and designing you do in the beginning. Yeah, you only get paid if you do the thing. And so I decided to like split my business, like bifurcate my business model. And so I have like a consulting part of it. So next time, so when someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, we really love your work. What could we do together? I say, all right, I would love to figure this out. I'm sure we can do it. I've done this before. The way we work is there is this whole design and prototyping phase where I lead you through a design thinking workshop and we come up with the best solution for the job. I might not be the right person to execute upon it, but I can help you think about the best idea possible for you. And then from there, we move on to the execution phase. And you build them for that? And I build them for that, yeah. I build them thousands of dollars for that. And so that's just been immensely helpful because I'm not wasting energy on something that has zero potential of going anywhere.
Well, that's it, because your business model revolves around doing a very small handful of projects a year. And if one of those falls through, then you're really left pretty stranded,
That was basically this year, because I had spent, once again, years building up these other projects. I had 3 big projects that just fell through. And so, 6 figures of projects disappearing is kind of sad. But it's fine.
Yeah. So how have you found the response to to you saying to these companies, look, we're gonna separate this job up into actual deliverables and the prep work, essentially? Have they been on board with it? You've obviously managed to sell it to them in such a way that they're like, let's do it.
Some say yes, some say no. I'd like to think that the ones that are serious will say yes, because they value the process of coming through with a unique and different idea. And it's an interactive process, right? It's not just it's not a one-way street. And oftentimes, like, we think as creatives that it's our solution to provide them with all the answers. But really what you need to do is cultivate a sense of buy-in from them. And the best way to get a sense of buy-in is if they're actually going to be shelling up their money and their time. And when someone pays money for something, they're also going to invest their time into something. Whereas if they don't pay for it, you're unlikely to also get their time, because they're just seeing this as like a side little thing. Yeah. There's zero skin in the game.
And companies understand consultation. Yeah. Don't they? Companies understand a consultation process. It's They can't ignore that. Everybody has a consultation.
There's a really great
which
book.
Is chargeable.
Yeah, there's a really great book for the listeners here called Win Without Pitching Manifesto. It's like a super small book. It takes just like a day to read, or half a day to read. And it gives you like the rules by which you might want to structure your artistic practice in order to value the process of what it is that you're offering.
Brilliant. Okay.
We'll have to drop that in the show notes. Yeah, drop it in the show notes. We'll drop a link to it.
But I think that's a brilliant idea. It's not something that I've actually heard other people doing. But I mean, when you spell it out like that, I mean, it's just obvious. Like, why wouldn't you? Yeah, I'm doing all that work already. Like, why wouldn't you want to invest in this? Yeah,
it only took me a decade to figure it out. So,
yeah, appreciate you doing all the hard work for us there, bud. Yeah, thanks.
Now, Ben, I see that even some of your big environment, I know we touched on this a little bit already in previous questions, but I see even some of your big environmental shots are still used as commercial campaigns or picked up for campaigns, even if you haven't shot it as a campaign. Now, I know you're still represented by your agent, Susie Johnstone. Yeah, so you still got an agent, but do you still shoot any sort of what we would call standard level commercial work to fit in and around your big, your really big campaigns that you do? Or is it just your main focus now to focus purely on the environmental work?
Yeah, so when I said I decided in 2016 to not do any projects that weren't connected to impact, that hasn't changed. So I don't do anything except what you really see. The other pieces of what I do are the consulting, the speaking, the education. Like all those are things that bring in revenue. There's licensing of the work that I've created. All those are revenue streams and they help kind of float the boat, I suppose. I also shoot for fun, where I can be of service. I'll shoot people for free whenever, like more often than I'll actually charge for it because I love helping people. I just don't think that it's like not how I want to earn money. I've always been really careful to not earn money doing something that I don't enjoy or that I don't want to make a career out of, because I think that money is a trap. The more you earn, the more you spend. And if you become dependent on the money that you don't want to be doing, then you kind of get sucked into this vortex. And I think there's like a balance for it. But yeah, by and large, all that I do has to be extremely in line. And even if there's not like a direct impact thing, for example, I could do something where I'm learning something, right? So I participated in the design of an installation inside of the office of a venture fund in San Francisco, because I wanted the experience of leading a creative project as a creative designer. So yes, I got paid for it. And no, it didn't have anything impactful connected to it. But I had to learn something from it. I was doing something I'd never done before. And so those are kind of the prerequisites for me to actually say, yes, this is worth my time, because that's all I have is my time. And that time is something I'm never going to get back.
I know we spoke about video earlier on, but from the beginning, you always seem to have been like heavily invested in the video side of things with BTS and B-roll whilst sharing your process with your followers. Why was that? I mean, for me, having a camera on set is a nightmare, and I'm worrying about it. But you seem to thrive on that, and it seems to be a major part of your shoot. Do you attribute part of your success today to that constant video diary of the shoots that you've kept?
I think I attribute 100% of my success to the fact that I have my stuff documented. There's no way I would be where I am today if I didn't have videos to support the work that I do. My shift came fairly early on. I think sometime in 2011, I did my first behind the scene video. Or maybe it was 2010. No, I think it was probably 2010. A girl I was dating at the time really, really wanted to document me working for some reason. And I was like, why would you want to document me? No one's ever going to want to watch this stuff. Anyways, she made a video anyways. We didn't have a video camera, so we bought a camera and returned it after 15 days. And this was at the time where F-Stoppers was just getting started. F-Stoppers was posting one behind the scene video a day. And it meant that if you were that one behind the scene video that was posted, you got a tremendous amount of visibility. And I realized that the exact same photograph that was taken would get so much more traction if I had a video attached to it. Yeah. And since then, I've just never stopped, because if you're going to go through all the trouble to create something, don't you want to give it as much of a chance as possible to be seen by people? Otherwise, what's the point, right? I think it depends on like why you create. So in my case, most of my creative journey has been about creating something so that it was seen by people. And if people weren't going to see it, I wasn't going to bother to do it. And so the barometer of every time I approached a project was kind of like, is this something that is unique and different? Is this something that's going to start a new conversation? Is this something that's going to trigger a new conversation? Otherwise, why bother doing it?
Interesting. Okay. So art to you then is not about you then. I say that because if you knew that nobody was going to see the pictures you took, would you still take them?
No, I wouldn't. Not photography anymore. Not photography anymore, because I had a point in my life where it was really about the process, and I was getting a lot of joy just creating it. And over time, that joy has gone away. I mean, photography, you have 3 settings, shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. You have composition, you have rules of lighting, and that's it. Like, what's the big deal? I think for me, I've kind of gone through the gamut of taking those photographs. And so I don't feel, it's become very much a tool. Now, all that being said, what's been so wonderful about the coronavirus for me has been this new journey of trying to figure out what to do with myself, because I am no longer what I do. Right? I am no longer the work that I create, because what I create isn't possible. And so the value that I can provide to the world has completely evaporated. So who am I and what do I want to do? And how can I find joy in doing something that is not that where I have to kind of start at the beginning of? And
because the joy for you isn't taking the picture, it's the growth that it gets
journey
afterwards. Yeah. Or
isn't the growth,
the minds that it can change. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the impact that it can have. And so so much of that energy has been focused outwards for so long that I've almost forgotten what it's like to just create for myself. And and like, how do you even get that feeling? Like, how do you can't manufacture like, oh, I wish I could just enjoy this more. Like, how do I get that feeling again? It just doesn't. It's either there or not. It's kind of like love. And so, and one of the things that I've started that I've just really enjoyed is this podcast of mine. It's called Impact Everywhere, and it explores positive impact in unexpected places. And it's brilliant. The first time in like a decade that I don't care how many people are listening to it, because I'm truly enjoying every single conversation that I'm having. I'm taking notes, I'm learning, I'm absorbing, I do need to figure out how to make it sustainable, but that's like a secondary concern. The primary concern is making sure that I continue to enjoy this journey of creating and learning and growing and talking to people that I needed an excuse to talk to.
That's awesome, man.
And that's been really, really fun.
Yeah.
And so one of my actual pet projects during coronavirus is how to regain agency over my own creativity, because I've lost that. I've lost that because my projects have gotten so big, which means that I'm not able to create unless I'm able to assemble a whole bunch of people and products and assets and money and so forth. Like, I need all this stuff to do anything. Otherwise, I'm trapped at home. So what can I do now? And so I've just started exploring with like weird stuff. Like, I mean, no one can see this, but I've started enjoying these like paper cuts that I've started building. And the excuse for creating these paper cuts is to promote my podcast. So I'm like taking the stories of my podcast guests and I'm creating them into multi-dimensional layered pieces
so
of
can
art.
You just explain that briefly to people who can't see what you're holding up?
Oh, wow. How do I describe this? It's,
good luck with that. Yeah, I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
It's layers of paper that have cutouts. So I found a printer that can cut, that has a blade. So it's a printer that has a blade that can cut things. It's called Cricut. And so I'm trying to convert. So I had the problem of figuring out how to promote my podcast art, and everyone's doing like the really ugly, like, take a photo of a person's face. This is probably what you guys are going to do. You're going to take a photo of my ugly face. You're going to put like some brilliant quote next to it. and it's just not like, it doesn't inspire. But it doesn't inspire conversions because it's just so standard.
Keep digging, Ben. Keep digging, buddy. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
He's right though, mate. Our faces definitely do not inspire conversions. Love it.
No, it's my face that doesn't inspire conversions. So like a face and a quote is just not enough. So I'm like, how might I use my creativity to create something that might be a little bit more shareable? And this is just, once again, it's for fun, right? And so I think that exploration has been generally like really, really cool to be able to have the space to do that a little bit. And to realize this is why I'm living at home with my parents for it, so that I can actually capitalize on it and do things like this.
But
otherwise I'd be squandering the opportunity.
If you're getting that buzz back from creating for yourself again, I mean, you got to lean into that for sure. You definitely got to lean into that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's anything that keeps me away from watching and binging Netflix. I'm like, okay, this is a good thing. This is a good thing.
I think we're all guilty of creating for ourselves, and rightly so. And conversations I've had recently is that people always worry about what everyone else thinks. So rather than trying to please themselves, they're always trying to please everyone else. And sometimes that can be a pointless journey, because you, like you say, you don't enjoy it. You're doing it for the wrong reason.
I just think it's really important to. It's not that it's not like, it's always important to also think about how others are going to receive it if and when that time comes. But you also need to it has to start from a place of internal interest. So when I look at my journey, and what it boils down to is like, when I first started photography, I enjoyed it, right? I loved it, and that's how I got really good at it. And then when I started doing behind the scenes, I really loved the process of trying to find a way to condense down a story into something that was very digestible. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the process of building a following and to figure out and to gamify these different systems to figure out how to get visibility. And then as I started getting into impact, I was really enjoying the idea of like Trojan horsing impact onto this like fantasy craziness that I was doing. And so there's an element of growth in every single one that was self-driven first and foremost. And then the rest of it was kind of the coding on top. So I think finding that internal fire is super important. And this is the first time that I've had the chance to like not have to build on an existing success, but rather just start completely anew. And there's something just being like the burdens of success are really a thing. Like when you have a brand, you have expectations, right? And these expectations pigeonhole you into what you're supposed to be doing rather than what you want to be doing. And as someone like me who relies on external feedback to fuel my growth, it's been kind of debilitating. So it's like, oh, I wish I could learn how to do 3D stuff, but like I can't share that because if I share it, people are gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? Go back to your photography thing.
Oh, that's what quit. You're good at. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So people keep you from growing. And that's the dangers of social media, man. If you let that control your life, you get sucked down some other path that you really didn't want to go down in the first place.
People do worry a little bit too much about what others think of their work. And I think that can sometimes lead us down a path of being afraid to make mistakes, which is what I see a lot of younger people struggling with there, because they feel like they have to share everything that they take for one. And if they're doing that, then they are afraid to screw up. They're afraid to make a mistake, which ultimately mistakes lead to doing something new, which leads to being creative. So the whole process revolves around you making mistakes, but people are very afraid to do it now, which is it sucks, man. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, think there are different kinds of mistakes, right? There are mistakes that are expected, right? So let's say I'm going to try a new photography technique. That's expected and that's welcome because then everyone can laugh together. But there are mistakes that are unwelcome, which is when you do a career shift or a career pivot and you decide to do something else. Like when I shifted from doing educational stuff to taking a more inspirational and aspirational approach to my behind the scene videos, I had a huge amount of blowback because people missed their daily dose of lessons that they were getting, right?
Really?
And then when I absolutely. And when I shifted from inspirational stuff to activism stuff, there was a huge pushback. People were just like, man, I miss the days where you're just doing things that were cool for the sake of being cool. Like, I don't want to hear about all this negativity all the time. And I just ignored that and I kept moving forward. Yeah, similar. And even now, like as I'm doing all this activism stuff, people are like, oh man, it's getting a little bit like redundant and repetitive of you doing the same kind of thing with different materials all the time. It's like, it's just always, there's always a pushback there. And so people don't want you to like shift directions. They want you to continue in one direction. And it makes sense because if you watch a reality show, and arguably everyone who's an influencer who has followers is a bit of a reality character, like The Simpsons, like the day Homer decides to stop being fat and lazy is a day The Simpsons stops being The Simpsons. And, the problem with people subscribing to other people's lives is that they're actually not allowing them to be like who they want to be or who they potentially could be because they're so stuck on who they were when they first fell in love with them.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, people. Yeah, even Von Wong gets shit about his work. There you go. Even Von Wong gets shit about his work.
I get so much shit about my work. Just go to any Petapixel, like, DP review comment section of any time I've been featured. Like, people shit on my work all the time.
So if we get back to your work a second, then I mean, some of the shots that you've done, as we've spoken about, have been hugely just like technical feats, underwater, fire. It's just the list goes on. But some of my favorite shoots of yours has been when you've actually worked with individual real people, and I say that with air quotes. Like the black and white smug mug staff shots you did, or the skyscraper superheroes of regular people. Like, you seem to get such a buzz out of pushing people outside of their comfort zone and then them being so grateful for it afterwards. Is this a conscious thing for you, or are you just saying, look, trust me, this will look cool and this is the shot I want, just do it?
just do it.
I think all of my work, my entire brand revolves around the idea that you can do whatever you want to do. You just have to believe in it, right? Like even the behind the scenes of me quitting my day job and becoming an artist was that entire character journey of a person just going out and figuring out how to make whatever they want a reality was the crux of my entire journey. And so when it drills down to like a singular photo shoot, being able to take a person and showing them that they can be something bigger, they can be something different, they can be something more is all very much in line with that. And even if we boil it down to these present day projects of mine, where we take, my installations are all about giving every photographer the chance of going in and taking a photograph themselves that can speak to something that they feel very passionately about, but don't have like the time or the resources to create like a set. But now I'm giving them that ability to do that. So very much everything that I do is about elevating other people and making them believe that it's possible. And I really try hard to do that. It's why I shoot with old equipment, right? I want it to feel relatable. In my latest projects, I fly there without any lighting, and I use whatever lighting the volunteers show up with in order to create my shots. Yeah, I have $12,000 of Broncolor equipment just like sitting around in my home, and I haven't used it in a couple years.
Aren't you sponsored by Broncolor?
He uses it every day, Broncolor. He uses it every day.
I was going to say, aren't you like...
Actually, it was like $24,000 a year. Though now with depreciation, it's probably a lot less. But no, I won the Broncolor Next Gen competition I don't know, like 5 years ago or something. And they're the only company that's ever been this generous, man, to like gift 24 grand a year to like a photographer and just say, do whatever you want. We believe in you. And
they only wish you'd use it.
Yeah. No, well, I used it. I used it for the first 2-3 years. It was, but as I started to realize that, I was shooting medium format with Broncolor gear. Like I was, like people just couldn't connect it. They said like they'd say something like, "Oh, when I have access to the gear and when I have the followers, then I can do that."
Yeah.
But that's not the lesson, right? It's not the lesson.
Not the case. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Not the case. Yeah, indeed. Well, I have to say that I loved your Nike Walk on Air campaign that you did, where for the listeners who can't visualize this, but they can go to your website and see it. Basically, where all your models were literally hanging off the side of a building by ropes. Just as you were hanging lower than them with your camera to take the shot. Now, a lot of people will probably look at that and go, they've sort of taken the shot and superimposed the people on it.
Photoshop,
it's a building that's been, it's Photoshop. But you did it, all this was in camera and there were people hanging from ropes. I mean, you had the runner and the cyclist. Those shots were amazing from that series. And I just think that's absolutely mental. But it just looked like so much fun as well. Now, how did that shot come about? I mean, I think you explained that at the beginning with the Nike one. But did you have a full creative freedom for that shot? Or did you just have the concept and the idea on that?
Yeah, one of the wonderful things about being a really weird creative is that when people come to you, it doesn't happen very often, but when they do, they want whatever is in your brain. So you gain a lot of creative freedom. So I basically had this guy come and say, look, we got these shoes. They are like a technological revolution. And our message is this idea of people who are defying conventions, who are defying gravity. And we really liked your Smug Mug shoot where you put superheroes on the edge of a 40-story skyscraper. Like, could you think of something cool like that in that vein that you would like to do that you've ideally never done before? And
what an offer.
And so I just thought that it could be really fun to shift the direction of what a floor would be, right? So what if the floor was vertical? Sort of like Inception style, I suppose. The fun thing about that project was that I really just dropped the idea and then they had to figure out how to do it. So they found me the building, they found me the production crew and the stuntmen, to do all the rigging. Yeah, and it's crazy. And then these guys had to then figure out how to hang us off. So great. It sounds easy, right? So let's just hang a person off. But then how do you get them back up, right? You can't just have people pulling on ropes,
True.
right?
True.
So they ended up using car winches to just reel us up and down. So they had these car winches just going pulling us up and down with these big braided metal cables and scaffolding. And I look back at that project and I'm like, man, this is something that could have never happened anywhere other than Southeast Asia. In the US, there would be so much liability. I mean, we had insurance and so forth. But the thing is, with the project itself, if you think about it, there's no danger, right? You're roped into this structure and it's safe and so on and so forth. So like there was no danger. So once again, if you go back to the fear and danger thing, you could do it too. All you had to do is just be okay hanging off. And so I think once you get
a trust thing, Ben. It's a trust thing. Yeah, you're saying there's no danger because you trust the person that put you there. Yeah.
But we do that all the time. You do that when you go on a roller coaster. You do that when you go rock climbing. You know, you put trust in a machine when you belt yourself into a car.
Yeah, I like it. There's no danger. But if you're afraid of heights, then it may not be for you. The fear will overtake that danger level.
But you can push through it. That's the good news.
That's the thing. It's that was my next question was, were your models stunt people or were they just regular everyday people? But you said they were all stunt people?
No. The stunt people were the guys who were doing the rigging. The people who were hanging off were all the everyday people. Yeah.
It's kind of a bit back to front, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they had experience with stuntmen, so they already knew like the harnesses and so on and so forth. But the people who were hanging were just ordinary people. Some loved it. Everyday people. And you would see the difference in the shots. Like they would be having fun and they'd just be bouncing off this building and swinging as far out as they could. And then you had people who were just terrified. So they were just like doing these like little hops and leaps and so forth. But they'd get comfortable. And like with everything, like you do it once, you do it twice, you do it 3 times, and you're like, oh yeah, it's.
Did you get any of them go when you started pitching the idea? I mean, how did you get these people? How did you get these people involved? Were they staff of Nike or?
No, it was Nike. Nike was sponsoring these guys. They were social entrepreneurs that they sponsored. So you know how Nike has all these like charitable initiatives. Like they focus on like human potential and human capital. And so that's why I was like, why are you guys trying to like promote influencers? Why don't you just promote all these other people who you're supporting who deserve the limelight?
Gotcha. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So during that then, did you ever get any of those people when you explained the concept to them go, yeah, so here's a concept, we're going to do this and you're going to be running on the side of a building. So we're just going to dangle you off the side of a building on some cables and you've got to look as comfortable as you can, like you're going for a run on a road. Did you ever get anyone go, no, I'm not doing that. Not doing that.
No, we had 100% success rate. And I think, if Nike reaches out to you to say like, hey, we want to use you for a campaign with this like international photographer who's going to be taking a shot that no one's ever done before. Are you interested? I think you'd push through too. Most people would.
Yeah.
You could always tell them that they got off. Yeah, they got off pretty lightly. They could have been underwater and set on fire. So come on, like they got off pretty lightly.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, we've come to sort of midway through the show. We're going to enter something a bit more lighthearted and not so deep and meaningful now. It's time for our rapid fire round. So this is where we fire a series of 10 questions at you. We may fire them in rapid succession, but we'll see how the answers come back. You ready for this one?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, one camera, one lens. What would it be?
Sony A7R2. Oh, actually, if I can shoot anyone. So Sony A7R4, 16-35, 2.8. It's not what I have. It's what I would take.
Yeah. In your BTS videos, your fashion code is very similar, should we say? How many of those shirts do you actually own?
25. 25 Von Wong shirts.
Everybody can't see that. Ben's wearing his Von Wong shirt right now, branding at its best.
Yeah.
Favorite food?
I'm vegan, so quite like the Impossible Burgers or the Beyond Burgers, I suppose.
One project you're determined to shoot.
So I don't. Can I rephrase the question as like what projects would I like to create?
Oh yeah, indeed, yeah.
So because the things I'm shooting right now are the things I'm creating. So there's this one project that I'd really love to do, which is an underwater installation that would grow itself over time. That would be designed to bring communities together and solve the environmental problem while converting tourists into spokespeople. And it's a project that I'm really interested in doing, not because it's an underwater installation, but because it would be able to provide the benchmark for how art could be used as a transformative tool to not only protect the environment, but create opportunities for local workers, as well as leveraging the fact that everyone is a photographer now with a camera. The idea was to create a coral garden that could organically grow over time, which would serve as an educational opportunity for anyone. So all these like scuba divers who would be coming in could actually like plant a coral and help grow this biorock, which allows coral to grow 10 or 100 times faster, depending on the technology used. And it would also help reconciliate the tensions between snorkeling groups and scuba groups. So snorkeling groups are largely managed by people who are locals because they don't have a lot of capital, and the expats who are running the scuba shops. And so it's just like a really complex situation. But when you use the arts, you get to create more business for both of these groups simultaneously, which create a photo op for tourists who are coming in to then speak about conservation, because they're active participants in the conservation, but it's an experience that you could actually see from the top as you're swimming and the bottom as you're going through it. And it could grow organically over time, which means that it could actually protect more and more areas which are under devastation, primarily through illegal anchoring and fish bombing, which are things that no one would do if it was actually harming the local economy. So you see this opportunity for the arts to serve as a catalyst for conservation and economic development all at the same time. So I am passionate about trying to figure out ways that the arts can be used for something that is a lot more than just entertainment.
Yeah. And everybody's wearing a face mask. It's win-win.
Yeah, win-win. It's win-win.
We'll dig a little deeper into dream shoots later on, but yeah, go on, Wayne.
Definitely. Yeah, an awesome answer though. Okay, name a critical piece of equipment you've dropped and broken while on one of your extreme shoots.
I mean, I've broken so many lenses and cameras and dropped them. I mean, it's actually fairly routine. I've just stopped replacing them. So I have a 16-35 right now that has a scratched lens, as well as an A7R2 that's gotten water damage, but still, functioning. You have to hit it a couple times sometimes to get it to work. Yeah, I've had lights short circuit. Actually, one of my lights fell into the ocean once. That was sad. The power packs are $8,000. So I had to get that repaired. I think on an Urbex Exploration once, I dropped a lens into the sewer, and that had to also get replaced. That was fun.
You didn't get it back then?
I did. I just picked it back up. Yeah. Wrapped it in a plastic bag and, do what you do.
Oh, nice. Nice. Just ferment a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm an extremely careless person. And I think it's because I see like my cameras as tools. So ultimately I treat them like tools. Yeah.
Do you always have a camera with you when you're not working?
Never. I have my phone. That is a camera. So yes, actually I have a phone, which is a camera. So yes, I always have a camera phone with me. I would arguably, I use that camera the most out of every other camera that I use.
Yeah, same as all of us nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
If your mama had to make you one meal when you came home, what would it be?
Ooh, I don't even know if there are names for the foods my mom make. They're just some Asian amalgamation of vegetables because I'm vegan, rice because I'm Chinese, and soup because I like soup.
That's some pretty clean living right there, man.
Yeah, I see a whole food line coming just out of that for you, Ben. That's a whole new realm of business.
Do you prefer video or stills?
Prefer in what sense?
If you could only choose one.
If I could only choose one, I'd probably pick video because I think it has more utility, and I can always just screen grab or loop a video into a still. I just think I just think it's more flexible. Do I enjoy videos? No, I really hate editing videos. It just takes so much time, energy, and effort, and I have to do it all alone in my bedroom.
This question isn't in there, but I was curious as to why the hell you're not a videographer, but I think that explains it, yeah.
I hate editing videos, and I also think you can do a lot less for a lot cheaper. Like everything costs a lot more. So lighting a video set is significantly harder than a photo set.
What superhero would you be?
I feel like I've answered this question before, but I can't remember. What superhero would I be?
Well, you can invent one if you want.
Like, which one would I want to be, or which one would I be?
Which one would you be?
Probably some tortured soul like Batman, I think. I'm very existential about I'm very existential about my life. I feel like I have a lot of resources at my disposal. So I have like a sense of privilege in the world, in that, I've been really lucky, and I have an education, I have some savings, like I have the ability to do all these things, but then, I'm trying, but it's not working. It's like it doesn't matter what you do, you still end up in the same place. And very much like tortured soul Batman. Yeah.
So speaking of bats, if you could hang upside down from a rope with a camera, one place in the world, where would you want to go?
Upside down in a rope?
You love hanging off things, Ben, let's be honest.
I do.
Yeah, kind of fitting with your work, really.
I do. I don't know. It seems like it'd be fun to hang off the International Space Station.
Okay.
That's an answer. That's question 10. What a hell of a finish.
Okay. I'm sure we can pick that up later.
Yeah. If any of the listeners can get me access, I'd be down,
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben comes with his own rope, by the way, just to let listeners know.
Yeah.
Get a rope sponsor in, make it happen.
Well, that's the end of the
we did say they were a bit
fire round, but
yeah.
In recent years, like you said at the start, you have been heavily invested, like yourself. You've heavily invested yourself and time into the charities, and specifically focused on the environment. And you mentioned a little bit as to how this came about. After some of your commercial jobs were a little bit less fulfilling than you perhaps anticipated them to be. But what really inspired you to make the focus, and let's be honest, how do you put food on the table when you work for a charity?
Well, I just didn't work I was earning money from speaking and other things for that year and a half where I wasn't really doing anything. And similarly, I spend less than I earn all the time. So I scale my spending dynamically based on my circumstances. This is why I'm currently at home with my parents, because it seemed like the most rational thing to do. The reason I do environmental work isn't so much because I care only about the environment. It just happens to be the thing that I've become pigeonholed into. So you say I've done a lot of underwater photo shoots, but I've done probably 6, and I've never owned an underwater housing. It is sort of this odd thing that's a byproduct of the success, of the visibility of the stuff that you've done leads to the illusion that it's what you do. And so the environmental projects just happen to be the ones that I've gotten the paid most often for, and the ones that I have been sponsored the creation of. And so as a result...
Who's paying you for those then?
The environmental projects. The environmental projects depends on the person. So with the Starbucks project, with the straw installation that I did in Vietnam, where we collected 168,000 straws, that was paid for by Starbucks. Wow. When I did the project with Dell with electronic waste, that was paid for by Dell, and so on and so forth. And so, sometimes I get people. So the projects fall into 3 categories. They fall under a self-funded category, which would be my Mermaid on 10,000 Plastic Bottles was self-funded. It cost me about $700 in order to create.
Wow,
that's cheap.
Yeah, it's super
incredible.
cheap.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jesus.
It was the cost of the pizza and the food and like gas and some art supplies for some people, but really it's like everyone pitching in.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. Christ, you can't even get a studio for a day for £700. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's self-funded projects. There is sponsored projects where they pay for the costs. So when I made the world's tallest closet, all those the expenses of the closet was paid for by the event that invited me to create it. And then there is paid projects where like the projects themselves are sponsored. And so because those 3 tiers were actually, I only get paid in one of those 3. That's why actually the consulting model works a lot better, and it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Clever boy.
Sense.
Yeah, I like it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But speaking engagements, as like just a segue, because I know that money is always like a big question, like speaking pays really well. When I started doing commercial speaking, and I don't know if this is going to come back, but when I was starting to do commercial speaking, I was getting paid $4,000 a talk. And that's the bottom of the food chain. It only goes up from there.
And who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to fund managers. I'm speaking to basically suits, fancy events, trade shows, things like that.
I was going to say, you're not talking to photographers for that sort of money, yeah.
Absolutely not. Photography is not where the money's at. Photography,
no, it's not.
Photographer, like, and that whole industry of like photographer, and that's why like speak at WPPI, NAB, and all that stuff. Like, you're lucky to get out of that net positive. Yeah, and so who's gaining in those equations? The only people gaining are the companies who are selling their product. Yeah. And so I think like, as an environmentalist, it becomes really, really difficult because you don't want to promote people buying new stuff all the time that they don't actually need. And so it's been really horrible for my sponsorships. So they've all kind of disappeared as a result because I'm no longer pushing product. It's like, I think it's the behind the scenes of all this stuff that's just like really interesting too. And these are the things that you don't make videos about because they're not exciting. But the mechanics of trying to build this sort of lifestyle is really, really interesting. And I think very specific to me. So I get a lot of my opportunities through the conferences that I speak at, because that's where I get to be in a room full of a bunch of executives. Because the work that I create is actually in competition with agencies. I do a lot of the design work, the creative thinking, the production, right? So I'm in direct competition with agencies. That my best projects often come direct from client. So the client finds me, they bring in their agency partner and say, this is the guy we're working with. How can you help him make this thing possible, and so on and so forth.
So following on from that, let's just dive into one of your environmental shots, because let's face it, they're an epic build, your environmental shots, and they look like they take so long to set up. Now, I know you've said previously in this podcast that some things take nearly a year to arrange and complete. That's a hell of a time scale to put something together like that. And as you just mentioned, which was in my question, the straw apocalypse that you did. I think that shot is absolutely awesome. And for our listeners who can't see it at the moment, can you visually explain what it is and take us through it and its setup, really?
Yeah, so Strawpocalypse is a Guinness World Record art installation made out of 168,000 plastic straws that were collected over the course of 9 months. Wow. It is 8 feet tall and about 10 feet long, and it depicts 2 waves made out of plastic straws that are parting. The waves are glowing, a combination of white, green, and blue as a result of the LED lights that we put behind them. The structure is made out of wood, and the wave itself is made out of recycled plastic bags that have pieces of straw just glued to them, and they are hooked onto a bunch of fishing wire that needed to be. So we had to create the distance between the wood and the plastic to not have any shadows. So turns out when you know how to light things as a photographer, you can also light things in installations too. So that's all that stuff is quite helpful.
Yeah, well, you've already answered my next part of that question was, how many straws we used. So did you say 180,000?
168,000 plastic straws.
So who was the poor bugger that had to count all of those?
We did.
I want to know.
We counted them and we recorded the process of counting them, because in order to qualify for a Guinness World Record, you have to document the entire process. And so we did it by weight.
Of course, yeah.
We did it by weight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It added, added an entire day of work to the whole process, because we had to set aside a whole day just to count straws.
So how long did that take to put together and set up pre-shoot day? How long did it take to do the whole logistics and build of all of that before you even picked up a camera?
So pre-shoot was about, without me being in Vietnam, was approximately 9-10 months. And then me on the ground in Vietnam was about a month. So I landed, we had to find a builder, get those pieces cut out, get it assembled, put in the mall. We had to clean all the straws, find all the people to help, so on and so forth. So yeah, that whole thing was a month. And that was a month of, 16-hour days. It was back to back, because every day was just one fire to put out after another. The other thing that's also really difficult is when you want to do things that are environmentally friendly, you can't just go and buy things. For example, when we were looking for plastic to put behind our straws, we had to figure out, where is all this recycling going? How can we get some, do people recycle? What happens? Turns out there's an informal waste economy that's there. And so the informal waste economy is all these people who are off the streets just picking things up off the floor all the time. So you just couldn't find pieces of plastic lying around. So we actually just bought plastic off of those guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I think the time alone, just putting that one project together, and because you're very hands-on in all your projects, you can see that in the behind the scenes. I mean, your hands in sorting out stuff and putting things in different piles and opening bags, and you're very hands-on with that. I think that just outlines your commitment to the passion to your cause in that respect, and I think that's just awesome. But I mean, what I love about your big environmental shoots, apart from the imagery and the paramount meaning behind them, of course, is that virtually all the people on your set that help you bring all that together are volunteers, aren't they?
Yeah. 90. I guess most of the people are volunteers. The people who do the actual building, you still have to commission. With installations, you have to actually pay someone to do the engineering and the build and the design and so forth. And that's just you have to pay for that. Otherwise, it's just kind of weird. But yeah, the volunteers are the ones who are doing the cleaning, who are doing the sorting, who are doing the organizing, who are doing the sticking on. And the videographer who came to make the behind the scene video was a volunteer. The person who did the spoken word poetry on one of the videos was a volunteer. I ended up being a volunteer because I didn't get paid. And then my girlfriend who shot the behind the scene photographs wasn't paid. So yeah, we're just all volunteers kind of pitching in, doing our part. I don't know. There's something that you don't get from paid crew when people are just there because they want to be there and because they believe in the cause.
Yeah.
And I think that's a feeling that I just really enjoy. I think I might be getting a little bit over it because it gets tiring. The amount of work it takes to wrangle people is so phenomenally high that I may be coming around to looking for something that's more scalable and more effective, because I haven't structured the business model to accommodate that. It's sort of it's an evolving process at this very moment. And I don't even know if it matters right now.
Yeah, true. And that's part of that. I mean, how do you get people involved in something like that? I mean, it's not like you pop an ad in your local paper next to houses for rent, is it? So how do people know that you're interested? Do you post out, or do you put on your socials, or?
Yeah, one of the key things to find in every project is an advocate for you, like a champion, like someone who So in the environmental movement space, you would be able to find, let's say, a zero waste group or a charity that already has a following of people who care about this kind of thing and who are looking for ways to get involved, right? So you have to kind of find like, and if it was a photography project, you'd find like a photo club, a person who was already in the process of, who already had a group of people who were doing something. Like I would say if I ended up where you guys are and I just said like, hey, I want to do a project, I need a couple extra hands, you would be able to find people for me. I might not be able to find people, but you would be able to find people because you're there and you know people and you know, you're a community leader in your field. And so it's all about finding the right person so that you don't go out there and just scream into the void. That's really ineffective.
Well, because you've just got a lot of shooters on your socials as opposed to people that may want to be environmentally active. Now, I'm sure you do have environmentalists, you know, that follow you, but yeah, a lot of your audience is going to be tailored more towards the photography side of things.
Well, it doesn't matter who follows me because no one is hearing my post anyways. So I think there's this like misconception that because I have a huge number of followers that a huge number of people are actually reaching my message. The problem with my message is that it's diluted over the entire globe. So I have people that follow me from all over the world. So if I need someone in Bristol,
true,
like how am I going to find the 10 people that I need in Bristol? I need to actually find like a local community person. So, you know, having a big megaphone is useful to like push a broad message out, but it's not actually very helpful to find,
you know, for sponsors and stuff then, you know.
Yeah, for sponsors it's good. For sponsors it's good.
We touched on this earlier on about dream shoots, and it's something that I'm sort of fascinated by because a lot of the students that I've mentored in the past, you know, I've asked them to share their truly ultimate dream shoot with me, and many of them don't have one as they see it as, you know, either impossible or never going to happen. You, on the other hand, seem to have no limits with what's possible in your shoots. Is that true? You know, have you shot your ultimate dream shoot already, or do you have something that is still beyond even your reach?
Well, I think it goes back to this idea that the dream shoot for me isn't a project I want to do. It's an experiment I want to run and the experiment I want to run is in service. Yeah. The image is just a product, right? Like, why is it so important for X person to take Y photograph in Y place with, you know, Z beautiful model doing, you know, whatever thing? Like, it's not going to change anything that you were the one that pressed the button to make that thing happen, right? And so I don't get the fascination behind the creation of the thing itself, but rather it's so much more about like, what is this going to enable you to do next? How is this going to create an opportunity for you to find or discover something new about yourself that you can now do? Like, what level are you, what secret levels do you unlock after you create that thing? So the dream shoot question to me just doesn't quite work, because if that was really the thing that you wanted to do, right? Like, I don't know if you want to go do a safari photo shoot with rhinoceros and poachers and whatever, like, then go do it. Just start reaching out to those charities. Go volunteer there and show up in the community and be of service first, and you'll find your opportunity there. I don't think it's very hard to make the thing that you want to do happen. I think it's so much more about, once you have that direction, like, how much are you willing to sacrifice in order to get there? And oftentimes what we end up realizing is that the thing we want, that we think we want so much, is actually not something we want that much, because we don't want to sacrifice all these other things in order to get there.
True.
Well, you seem to be going through that process now, again, of shifting as to what you potentially want to do. I mean, you said that you used to get this buzz out of taking the images, and now it's the result, and now you're looking again to move on. Yeah.
I mean, I think so much of it is about the growth perspective, right? So how can I put myself in a situation to be better positioned to pursue my next thing? And that starts with actually like seeing the opportunity in things instead of just like feeling sorry for yourself. So, I mean, not to say that it isn't important to feel sorry for yourself. I think everyone has to go through these periods of grief, right? You don't get bliss without like tragedy. Like, you need to have the ups and the downs. And so when the downs,
I agree, man. I agree.
Yeah. So when the downs hit, I just commiserate and just kick myself around for a little while, and then I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm tired of being sad now. Let's start finding the happy.
Do you think that's exaggerated with creatives?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think that we have the social construct and benchmarks to position ourselves against in order to understand what happiness is.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, for example, like somebody who has a job, has like a salary, has a position, has their peers, has their progress. They can look back on the projects that they're building. Like it's very like it's like a container that's very well defined. But when you're like a creative freelancer and you're out and there are moments of feast and famine and drought, and you don't know what's going to happen next, and it's this like ever moving construct, and it's not even just about the business, it's about what you feel and what you care about and where you are at this moment in your life. Like there are just so many amorphous components to it that the baseline is really, really hard to find. Now, that being said, I also think that's why creatives in this time of coronavirus are actually best positioned to bounce back from it, because this is just another shitty situation that we're facing. Yeah. It's just about finding the opportunity. Whereas people who, have now been thrust in a situation that aren't used to having to constantly reinvent themselves are like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So
it's a fair comment. Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
I mean, we could go on talking for hours and hours and hours into a lot of your directions projects. I mean, your creative thought process and the way you change direction and evolve and develop and adapt is just phenomenal. I mean, digging deep into your creative mind is just a series in itself, I think, the way you think about things in life.
I guess one thing to be conscious of is like my website, vonwong.com, is like a decade of experiments and failures. And so, of course, I would hope that like within the 10 years of my life, I would have done some cool things here and there. And so diving into like, just the highlight reel, it's always important to remember that there's a lot of periods in there where it's just so much uncertainty and so much, what am I doing? Like, I think doubt, that's just something to like remember that's there. And it's even more pronounced for me. If there's one thing I've been really great at, it's been like just touching upon success and being like, nope, that wasn't for me. I'm going to go the other way instead. And so I'm like constantly like self-sabotaging my own career. But that's a choice that I've decided to make. And, I think you just have to live with that kind of thing. And so rather than worry too much about like what your strengths, like worrying about the weaknesses, I think it's about accepting the weaknesses and seeing what cool things can happen as a result of it. Like, what are you able to do, like, in spite of yourself, and how do you transform that into something great?
Yeah, exactly. What new things will come out of these problems that we've got right now? I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a good tangent thought process to sort of develop from, isn't it? Really, to look at it like that and use a weakness as a strength rather than a failure. So Ben, what's on the Ben Von Wong to-do list at the moment then? I mean, we touched it at the beginning a little bit. Now we're in this uncertain transitional phase and you're still trying to work out what you're going to do next, where you're going to go, how you're going to do it. But I mean, I know I've asked you this off air already, but just for the listeners, can you share with us any details on any current projects or upcoming projects that you have coming up?
I wish I had some like great inspirational thing to tell you, but I
love it.
I don't. So let me answer the question though in what I think could be an interesting way. So when this whole coronavirus thing hit, I was like, oh, this is wonderful. The whole world is in a state of crisis. Like, what can I do? This is so fun. Like, what opportunities are here? And so I started launching myself in all these different projects. I was like, oh, if I'm good at collaboration, I can just do these like remote collaborations everywhere. And so I just launched myself into a couple different projects. One of these is called The Other Heroes. It's an attempt to create a video compilation of vulnerable people helping other vulnerable people all around the world. So far we have like 30 different countries. We're still looking for more. If you guys know anyone who's, doing good work, definitely please let me know. It's theotherheroes.com. And the whole goal was just like, there is not one single video online right now that paints a global picture of how humanity has responded to the coronavirus. We have a lot of localized stories, but we don't have a global one. And it just seemed like a really cool thing to do. Like, how heartwarming. I started like joining another nonprofit as a creative director, launched a bunch of projects there and so forth. And I just like, I don't know, the best way that I can describe that moment in time is like me trying to run a marathon on a rocking chair. I was just like, I got to do everything. And I was just not getting anywhere, but I was expending a lot of energy. And I did that for about 6 weeks. And then I just started like burning out. And I realized, you know what? As good as I am at collaboration, remote collaboration is actually, it's not creative. It's just spreadsheets and emails and outreach. And it is so boring. And I suck at it because I'm not organized. And so, and trying to keep volunteers motivated to like parse through Excel spreadsheets and do outreach is really difficult. Like, that's not an experience, right? That's not a life experience.
I'm with you there.
So anyways, so I've learned these things the hard way. I'm still working on a couple of these projects because I started them and I think the world still needs them. So I was going through that. The other thing that I was working on is the podcast that I mentioned a little bit earlier, Impact Everywhere. Yep. And that's just been a fun process for me to like be a part of. And so what's been surprising for me is that that's probably the one thing that I've enjoyed the most about quarantine is a thing that's bringing me zero visibility that I'm learning a lot in. And so that's been like a wonderful kind of reminder of what's important to me. The third thing that I'm doing is like, I'm wondering if this is an opportunity because so much of my work is in design. I'm wondering if if there's an opportunity for me to shift from execution into strategy a little bit more. And so I'm using this time of peace and quiet to wonder, how might I position myself differently? And how can I have an impact when my hands are tied behind my back? And that's been like really wonderful because it's forced me to like explore a part of myself that I think I've just never had to face because I've always just hidden behind the work that I create, right? And now I don't have that luxury anymore. So I have to really reinvent myself. And so it's prompted a bunch of different interesting questions like, where does impact happen? How does impact happen? What is the most effective way like that impact happens in the world? And like one thought that's been going through my mind as like a tangible thought thread is nothing changes without money. And so what if I could use the power of storytelling and narratives to make sure more money flows to where it needs to, so that instead of generating views, I'm generating dollars, but I'm not actually generating my dollars. I'm just diverting like useless dollars that would go somewhere else to some capitalist thing into something a little bit more meaningful. And so like, okay, I said earlier that I was speaking at fund manager conferences. So I have a call with a fund manager next week who is doing like water conservation through his fund to see like, and he had a horrible presentation. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can actually like help you tell a better story. And how might we insert the arts into this thing? Because then you can measure a performance increase. So then you're not talking about the value of art from an emotional sense. You're talking about the value of art in its ability to convert people and divert more dollars through story. And I think that nuance is very important because ultimately we live in a capitalist world.
For sure. Yeah.
So those are the questions that I've been exploring. I have no idea where it's going to land me. Part of me is like, okay, let's say this whole like narrative strategy works, then like I don't see myself working on fund manager presentations for the next decade of my life, right? Like that would be so underwhelming. So like I don't know what the end goal is. I don't know where it brings me to, but rather than worry about the future, which is I think what everyone is doing now in a world where we really can't predict what's going to happen. Like everything could be fine and then a second wave could hit and everything could be not fine. Like over here in Canada, there was this one guy who took like a weekend trip to Quebec, picked up the coronavirus, went back to New Brunswick, and they had only 3 cases up till now. And now there are 550 people that are on lockdown over there.
Wow.
It's like,
and they know who that guy is. Wow.
And they know who that one guy is. I don't know what's going to happen to him, but he's not popular because the entire like community, the entire country, now they're doing the whole contact tracing thing. So like all the surrounding communities are getting locked down. So like, you can think you know what's going to happen next, but really you don't know what's going to happen next. And so I've just decided to embrace that and focus on what I can do, regardless of whatever happens around me. So I've actually like actively not tried to go outside. I haven't missed going outside. Instead I've looked towards how might I create human connection through a screen, right? So I've actually set up my DSLR to stream through my computer. I got like some buckyballs in front of it in order to create some bokeh in the front. I feel like
balls?
Buckyballs.
Some what?
Buckyballs. They're magnetic balls that just they just stick together. I'd show you, but I'd have to unplug my Rodecaster in order to show you. So I can show you guys like after this podcast.
That's fine, man. That's fine.
Like just finding different.
Bucky was missing something.
Yeah. But it's all about like finding different ways to leverage this moment in time. Like what can I do now that I could never do before? Right. And that's just so much more positive of a way to look at it.
I agree.
Rather than just be like, oh, I wish I could have wine with my friends. Yeah. But I mean, I went through that process already. So it's not like I'm not trying to be preachy about it. I'm just saying that there are so many different ways we can choose. There's a quote that maybe would be really, really great to insert here that I heard from an Auschwitz survivor. And she was saying how they would tell each other jokes every night. And one of the jokes that they had was like, are you happy to be in Auschwitz? And the answer is, of course, I'm happy to be in Auschwitz because even if I wasn't happy, I'd still be in Auschwitz anyways. But I can choose to be happy. And like, I just think that is like so profound and so simple, and such a reminder that like the thing that we really have agency over is like our own perspective on the world and nothing else. So that's what I'm doubling down on right now.
What a quote to end.
Yeah, what an ending.
That is a power statement in itself.
Brilliant.
Isn't it? That's the perfect closure. I don't think it could be any stronger than that. Really.
I mean,
it's like, where do you go from here?
I know, where do you go from here?
Thank you so much, Ben. That has been awesome. Yeah, that's been really good.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys.
It's been amazing.
The time's flown by. I thought we'd only be going like 45 minutes, but it's been like an hour and a half or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is an hour and a half.
Yeah, I wish. Well, what's frustrating about this podcast is I want to know what you guys are up to, but it's just been a one-way conversation. So I've given out a bunch of information and I've received zero. This is not fair.
Well, we're available for consultations if you need us.
Yeah, I can't wait to get on that environmental podcast just as guests. I think it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Well, Ben, we're going to move into wrapping up. So obviously, we can always get you in for a part 2. And I think that there's several more chapters in there as your life evolves and develops and deviates and grows. So, I mean, you're always evolving and developing in your own life, let alone your work. Definitely more episodes.
I think we're going to see a huge amount of variety from Ben in the coming years after this. Just from the sounds of it.
I think so.
For better or for worse. The great thing is nobody sees your failures, right? Like if you do something that sucks, nobody will see it.
Yeah.
And so actually the chances are if I fail in the next 2 years, you won't see a peep from me.
Gotcha.
It doesn't mean I won't be doing anything. You just won't see it.
Yeah, I've just been thinking a lot. I've just been doing a lot of thinking.
I don't know. I think you need to test that parameter a bit more. I mean, I've posted a couple of things out that I think suck, and people have loved it. So who am I to judge?
Well, that's another problem that you have. But hey, I was thinking, I have an idea to throw you guys that would be interesting. So I was thinking, like, how might you guys use your skills? So as photographer and like lighting experts, because your work is awesome, like how might you use this to like promote a podcast like this? And it just crossed my mind as something really funny, and take it or leave it. But if you took a faceless mannequin, you could effectively take photographs of like a FaceTime thing and align like a portrait right now. with a mannequin. True. And you could light that shit up, and it would be like the behind the scenes would be way more funny than the final product. And that process might just be like that's something that you would get on like a blog for, right? Like that's something that Petapixel would write about just because it's so funny and ridiculous, but it's still photography. So anyways, just thrhrowing random ideas your way.
You just got to think like Ben. You're not got to worry about the end product. You just got to think, what's the BTS going to be like?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you guys are experts at the end product. So you can get a great end product without even thinking about it. That's the part that comes naturally to you. The part that's harder to think about and the part that actually people lap up is the process in between. So you already have the final piece.
Agreed.
No matter what you do, it's going to be great. You just need to figure out that other slice of it.
TikTok, here we come, Jake.
How much do we owe him for that consultation?
Failures?
He told us he was going to charge us for this.
Well, Ben, before we go, this is something we ask all our guests. And this is where we ask you to personally recommend 2 artists, and I mean that in any form that you wish to interpret, from either the photographic, the video world, the creative world, however you want to take that on board, to come on to Podlemania as a guest and come on and do an episode with us. We ask you to get in touch with them because hopefully it's people that you know or that you've had involvement with, and just do sort of an intro, via email intro to us, and we'll do the rest and get them on as guests.
And these are just artists, but what's the purpose? Like, what lessons are they supposed to bring you?
Well, similar to lessons to every creative we have on, because every creative has their own journey their own experience and their own input, and I think that for our listeners, whether it be topical based or non-topical based, it's either educational in the photographic or video form, or the industry that many of those people are involved in that make up those industries, or it could be about personal journeys and mindsets and state of mind or anything. So it could be any 2 guests that can...
It doesn't have to be from the photo and video world if you think that they've got something that could be valuable to share.
Indeed. Okay, you don't have to say it right now. You can...
Were you looking for the names right now? Oh, okay.
No, just to put the pressure on. But, it's fine.
No pressure. We'll give you 30 seconds. No, seriously. No, but sometimes we have guests. They reel off like 4 or 5 people before I finish speaking. It's crazy, isn't it? But obviously, this is down to you, and obviously your journey that you've been through over the years. There might be people that stand out to you that go, "Hey, they would be really good to get on a podcast because they've got their own journeys to share, which people could learn."
Yeah. No, I guess I was just asking because
that could be cool.
And I took this community design class, and there's one nugget of wisdom in there, which was people don't pay for content, they pay for transformation. And so that's always stuck with me. And so it's like, what kind of transformation are you offering your listeners as a result of listening to this podcast? And that would inform the kinds of people that I would recommend. And so I'm putting like a little bit more layers of thought into like who to recommend.
A little bit of pressure.
No, that's fine. Now, take into account our listener base is very varied. So we go from the very basic of amateur through to enthusiast to pro level in many genres on both the video and photographic side across the world. So it is a very broad scale.
But they're listening to the two of us, so it's not too serious, you know.
True.
So they're actually here for a good laugh, really, is what they're looking for.
Basically, yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah. I just need to find the people who can put up with your wit and then just like magnify it, you know? But like, how do you make this show even more ridiculous?
We'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, yeah. No, this is the funnest podcast I've been on in terms of like the dynamicness of it. So it's been good. It's been fun.
That's cool. Okay, Ben, for our listeners, where can our audience find you? Your website is?
Well, it depends what they're looking for. I have multiple websites for different people. I think if they're looking for case studies and how I present to the world, unforgettablelabs.com is probably the best place to go, which is what I show like client facing. vonwong.com is where you're going to find my art. And the reason the two are separate is because vonwong.com, you'll notice, is really about an artist. And artists have power over consultants in that they enter with people's guards down, and they have the ability to sit at the table of kings and peasants. So you get a lot of access. But then when you want to convert people to dollars, you need something a little bit more converty. And then I have my podcast, impacteverywhere.org. I have TikTok, Von Wong, Instagram, Von Wong, Facebook, Von Wong. You know, I'm not very original, so it's really Von Wong everywhere.
Perfect.
So you can get lost people. Anything you want to look at, it's just Von Wong.
And if you want to reach out and collaborate or just say hello, vonwong.info will lead you to a contact form. And I have over 3,000 people in this form that I use whenever I travel. And it's like, if I need a place to crash, I go into that form I reach out to people.
I checked that out. Yeah, there's like questions at the bottom. Where can I stay? In your room? On your sofa?
Yeah,
I saw that.
Absolutely.
Nice.
And it's fantastic. That's how you meet really cool people that are so unexpected.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Everyone should have you should have jake.info, wayne.info. Go for it.
Yes. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I like it a lot. Yeah.
That's not a bad shout. Okay, well, we're going to put all these links in the show notes anyway. So people can log into the podcast. They can go through the show notes and they can see all that information down below. If they want a shortcut, if they can't remember, or else people will be pressing replay a lot and writing shit down. That'd be cool. And Jake, anything else for you before we round up?
No, man, that's been amazing. Yeah, that's been really good. Yeah, it's been super deep. Yeah. Juicy content. I like it.
Juicy content. Yeah, we did say we come back with a bang.
With the Auschwitz quote in the back.
That's just it's powerful, man. It's powerful. Well, folks, if you would like to help us to produce and record even more great interviews and content for your ears with some of the world's greatest creative talents, your donations and support is very much appreciated. You can go to our website, can pass your contributions over on there. We appreciate that. And if you like this episode and don't want to miss out on new episodes, then please make sure you subscribe to us on your chosen podcast player, or you can subscribe to the podcast at www.podlemania.com/subscribe. And remember, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes Store, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, podlemania.com, and many, many other podcast players, about 35 podcast players in all, I think, Jake, yeah?
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Ridiculous. But we just want to say thanks for joining us in episode 28. And I think a very, very, very big thank you to our guest, Ben Von Wong, who's just been amazing in sharing his knowledge and insight and journey, part of his journey with us. And we certainly look forward to catching up with him again and catching up with you all in the next episode.
Thanks so much, Ben.
From all of us here, that's it. Goodbye from me. Goodbye, Ben. Thanks ever so much.
See you next one.